Morning grade 7s and welcome back to learning about fractions. Today we're going to do multiplication of fractions. So let's get started. Okay, so first of all we're going to do some examples that to help you understand the different methods that you can use. Now there are two different methods that you can use to multiply fractions. Now remember, this is a completely new topic to some of you. You've never multiplied fractions before. You've added, you've divided, but you have never actually multiplied fractions. So for those of you who've never done this before, please don't stress. Like I said, it is a new concept, but together, if we practice and we do it slowly, you will grasp this method quite quickly. Okay, now there are two methods that you can use, and the one is a little bit harder than the other, just purely because you don't simplify anything. You might simplify your answer at the end, but that's about it. So we want to try and use a method that is the easiest for you. Now, in the beginning, you might find you like method 1, and then as we go on, when we get to the longer questions, and when I say longer, I mean like instead of having two mixed fractions, we might have 3 or 4. Now, when we get to that point, you might start finding that method 1 doesn't really work for you, and you might want to actually go to method number 2 instead. So I'm going to teach both methods to you. You can decide which one works for you in the beginning, and as we go along to the harder questions, you might actually start to find that method 2 works better. But like I say, each person has their own ways of doing things, and they prefer different methods. So at the end of the day, it's absolutely your decision of which method you like to use. Okay, so let's get started on method number 1, and we're going to use 7.5 times 1 and 4 over 5. Okay, and first of all, when we are working with multiplication, we need to change to improper. And now this is the biggest thing to remember. Okay, now this is super important. And if we can't change to improper, we're actually not going to get the right answer. So when I say you can't change to improper, it means you haven't changed to improper. Now, what some kids sometimes do when they first do this and they haven't learned the method, they might take 7 times 1 and take the half and times by 4 and a 5, and they get an answer. But that is completely incorrect. Okay, so the first thing you have to do is you have to change to improper fraction. Okay, and by the end of this lesson, you're probably going to be absolutely amazing at changing to improper, because that's all you do in the beginning. Okay, so it's a good way to practice changing to an improper fraction. Okay, so first of all, we've got 7.5 times 1 and 4 over 5. We're going to make each of these improper. So we're going to take 2 times 7 is 14, add the 1, and we get 15 over 2. Times by 5 times 1 is 5, plus 4 is 9 over 5. Okay, and at this point, you are left with 15 over 2 times 9 over 5. Now, when you are multiplying fractions, you need to times top with top, okay, and bottom with bottom. So in this case, you're going to get 15 times 9 and then 2 times 5. Okay, if you work it out, 15 times 9 is 135. And 2 times 5 is 10. Now, I've said this in previous lessons before and in previous YouTube videos, that if you can't do 15 times 9 in your head, which most people can't. I mean, some people can, and they're very lucky, and that's wonderful, but most of us can't do 15 times 9 in our head. So my suggestion to you is to do a little sum on the side. Now, I'm doing it in Koki. If by chance you need to erase it afterwards, I would rather suggest doing it in pencil. But I just want to show you that by doing little sums on the side and doing some little bits of working out, that you can get to the correct answer rather than trying to guess and trying to do it in your head. Okay, so 9 times 5 is obviously 45. We're going to carry a 4. 9 times 1 is 9, plus 4 is 135. Okay, so that's where I got the 135 from. Okay, so 135 comes from 15 times 9. The 10 comes from the 2 times 5. Okay, now we're left with this big number here, and now we need to figure out how we're going to simplify this. Now, in terms of simplifying, what we're actually going to do is we're going to see how many times can 10 go into 135. Now, if you know your 10 times table, you know that you're going to get from 10 to 100, so 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, that's 10 times. Then you're going to get 110, 120, and 130, so that is 13 times that 10 can go into 135. How much is left over? and we're left with 13 and 5 over 10. Now, obviously, you don't want to leave your answer like that because obviously we need to simplify it. So I know that 5 can go into 5 and 5 can go into 10. And that's how we simplify. We always use the same number top and bottom to divide by. Okay, and here we're left with 13 and 1 over 2. And your final answer is 13 and a half. Okay, so that is what we're looking for at this point. So first thing you do, change your mixed numbers into improper. Okay, and in method 1, we're just going to times top with top, bottom with bottom, and we're left with this as an answer, 135 over 10. I try and simplify it or change it back into a mixed number. Okay, so I can get 13 and I'm left with 5 over 10. Obviously, I want to try and simplify it and I get 13 and a half. Okay, let's try method number 2, and I'm going to use a different color for this one, just so you can identify it. Okay, I know a lot of people like blue in any case. Okay, so let's go to method number 2. Now, method number 2 is very, very simple. It's very similar to method 1. There's just one extra step involved. But even though it's got an extra step, that extra step actually makes it easier. Okay, so it sounds weird. You're adding an extra step, but it actually makes it easier to work with. And you'll see why. Okay, so first thing again, exactly the same as method 1. Change to improper. So as soon as you see multiplication, you need to change to improper. Okay, let's just move it over so you can see it. Okay, so let's make this improper. So 2 times 7 is 14 plus 1 is 15 over 2. Same number as the previous one, 1 and 4 over 5, and we're left with 9 over 5. Okay, and now what we're going to do is making life a lot easier. Let's try and see if we can simplify this. Now, there's this method called cross simplifying, and what it means is you're going to find two numbers. One has to be a denominator and one has to be a numerator, and you are going to try and find a number that can go into both of them, but you have to make sure that it's two numbers, okay, and one has to be a denominator and one has to be a numerator. And what I mean by this is, if you look carefully here, we know the numerator is at the top, denominators at the bottom. Numerator top, denominator at the bottom. Now, I can see I can't do anything here. Nothing can go into 15 and 2. Okay? And over here, nothing can go into 9 and 5 equally. But, look at this. This is a numerator and that's a denominator. Can you see if we divide both of those by 5? Okay? Then we're going to simplify it. So it doesn't matter if they are on either side. You can still use them. So you could use a numerator and denominator here or there, or you can even cross them. So this is where it says cross simplifying. Okay, so we've got 15 divided by 5. So just divide both of these by 5 and we're going to get 1. 5 divided by 5 is 1. 15 divided by 5 is 3, and we just put it over there. Okay, so this is a new method, so just bear with me for now. Take a deep breath, and we're just going to slow it down so that you can grasp this new concept. Okay, so now we've taken the 15 and the 5 and we divided both of them by 5 to get a 3 and a 1. So that's where your 3 and your 1 come from. And now you can multiply out. So I just want to rewrite it for you to show you what we're left with. We're left with 3 over 2 times 9 over 1. Okay, so that's what we're left with. Okay, after simplifying and what have you. Okay, and now you can times top with top and bottom with bottom. Okay, because that's how we multiply fractions. Okay, and now what you can do, 3 times 9 is 27. 2 times 1 is 2. And we're left with 27 over 2. Okay, now let's see what is 27 divided by 2. Or we can say how many times can 2 go into 27. 2 can go into 27. If you know your 2 times table, you'll realize that it goes in 13 times with 1 remaining, because 13 times 2 is 26. Add 1 more and I get 27 over 2. And we've got the same answer. So we had 13 and a half here. We had 13 and a half here. Now, I just want to show you something as well, that we've done the same methods. We had 15 over 2 times 9 over 5. We had 15 over 2 times 9 over 5. The only difference between the two was here we simplified Okay, so we made the numbers smaller to work with, but they still mean the same thing at the end of the day, because if we've done it this side or we've done it that side, then we've done it equally. Okay, now once we got to the point of multiplying from one side to the other, top with top and bottom with bottom, you'll notice with method 1 we got to a massive answer of 135 over 10. If you look down below, when we multiplied out, we didn't have such a massive number. We had 27 over 2. And personally, I think that working with smaller numbers is easier. Okay, and that's what we're trying to do at the end of the day, is to get to a smaller number. Okay, but now it doesn't matter which method you choose. You can choose method 1 or method number 2. Okay, so let's look at method number 2. And method number 2 is going to be easier to work with if we use, obviously, our simplifying technique. Okay, so let's look at this one, and we're going to use the same numbers. We're going to use 32 over 5 times by 35 over 8. Because remember, all we have to do here is we have to convert to improper. Okay, so it doesn't matter which method you use, you still have to you've got to still convert into improper. Okay, but now instead of having to times top with top and bottom with bottom, we'll do that a little bit later. We're going to try and see if we can simplify this. Okay, so remember, we're going to choose one numerator and one denominator, and it doesn't matter which side. So remember, you got to try to find a number that can go into both. Now I can see we've got 35 and 5, because can you see that both multiples of 5? So we're going to divide both by 5. Okay, 5 goes into 5 once, 5 goes into 35 7 times. Okay, so that's quite cool. Now we've already made the numbers a little bit smaller. Let's see if we can do anything with 32 and 8. Now 32 and 8, I can see 8 can go into both of them. 8 goes into 8 once, 8 goes into 32 4 times. And now we can times top with top and bottom with bottom. So 4 times 7 is 28. 1 times 1 is 1. And obviously we don't write it like that. We're obviously going to write it as 28. Now that is so much easier than that one. Okay, so that's a personal opinion. But again, you can choose which method works for you. Now this is new for you. Okay, this whole simplifying is very new to you. So sometimes in the beginning, you're a bit afraid to use this method because you're not 100% sure if you're on the right track. Now that's why you have to practice and practice and practice, because the more you practice, the more you're going to get used to doing it, and the better you're going to become at it. Okay, and another thing, you need to know your times tables. Okay, again, I think it's been stressed since you were very little, or in the younger grades, to know your multiplication tables. And the reason why is because of all of what you're doing now. Okay, it makes it much faster and much quicker to do. Okay, so that's question A. Okay, so let's just do B quickly. And we're going to do exactly the same thing. I will do both methods again, and then you can get a feel for which one works for you. So we're going to do method 1, and we'll do method 2. Okay, so let's see what we've got. 4 times 2 and 1. So 4 times 8 plus 1 is 9. Remember, we're going to change it to improper. And 3 times 6 is 18, plus 2 is 20 over 3. Okay, and we can actually write this for both of them, because remember, we've got to do it for both sides anyway. Now remember, when you do these questions, you only have to do one method. I'm only doing both methods, so you can see which one works better for you. Okay, all right, so method number 1, remember, is all about just timesing them out. Okay, nothing is really happening besides timesing top with top and bottom with bottom. Now 9 times 20 is 180. 4 times 3 is 12. Again, you might need to know your 12 times table, or you might have to do a little bit of a division sum very quickly. And again, I'm going to do a quick little division one. I'm going to use short division, and just because it's quicker and faster. Okay, if you need to do long division, by all means do it. Okay, 12 can't go into 1, but 12 can go into 18. 12 goes into 18 once, with 6 remaining. 12 goes into 60 5 times. So your answer for this one is 15. Okay, your final answer is 15. Okay, let's go to method number 2 and see if this one's a little bit easier. And I'm just going to swap over with colored pens just so you can see what's happening. And we've got method number 2. Now remember, method number 2 is all about simplifying and seeing what we can do to make it easier. So I can see we've got a 4 and a 20. Now I know 2 can go into 4 and 2 can go into 20, but let's try to find the biggest number that can go into both of them. And the answer is 4. So 4 can go into 4 once, 4 goes into 20 5 times. Let's do 3 and 9 because I can see those 2 can go. 3 can go into once, 3 can go into 9 3 times. Now what we're left with is we're just going to times top with top, bottom with bottom. 3 times 5 is 15. I don't even have to write over 1. If you do want to write over 1, that's fine, but just remember to simplify it further down to just normal 15, and you get your answer. I'm just going to show you what I mean. So 3 times 5 is 15, 1 times 1 is 1, and just write 15. Now you'll notice that with both the first question and the second one, that you've gotten, well, both of them have got to an end of a whole number. It doesn't always happen like that. It just so happens that these 2 exercises that you have got whole numbers as your answers. Sometimes it will involve a fraction as well. So I don't want you to get your hopes up that if you end up with a fraction on another exercise, just for example, that you think you're wrong. Okay, it's not always going to end up as a whole number. It just so happens that these 2 do. Okay, all right. So now I'm going to show you a little bit more of a challenging one, and not really challenging. It's actually quite a fun one. Now I'm going to do this also for both methods. Sorry, it's a little bit high up there. Okay, so I'm going to do method 1 and 2 again. Now this one is quite a challenge. Okay, when I say a challenge, I mean it's going to be quite large. Okay, so listen very carefully. I'm going to do both methods. We're going to start with method 1. Okay, I'm just going to write method 1 here and method 2. Okay, and you're going to see the difference between the 2 methods now. Why? Because we've added in an extra multiplying of another number. Okay, so again, same thing. We have to change to improper. 8 times 1 is 8, plus 7 is 15 over 8. Times by 1 and 1 over 6. 6 times 1 is 6, plus 1 is 7 over 6. And times by 1 more, 7 times 2 is 14, plus 6 is 20 over 7. Okay, now for me this one is, you can already see the numbers are quite large. Okay, they're not massive at this point, but when I times them out, it's going to become quite big. So here we've got 15 times 7, okay, and 15 times 7 is 105, and we are going to then times it by 20, and you're going to see you're going to get an answer of 2,100. Okay, now if you need to do working out on the side, you are more than welcome to do that. Okay, next one, we're going to times out our bottom numbers. Okay, and we've got 8 times 6. All right, 8 times 6 is 48. 48 times 7, and you're going to get 336. Okay, and that's quite a big one there. Okay, it looks a bit awkward. I don't know if some of you are feeling a little bit overwhelmed with your answer there, because now that's quite hard. I don't know how many times 336 goes into 2,100, and this is when you're going to then have to do a long division calculation. Okay, and if you do it like that, you're going to have to, it's going to take you some time. Okay, now the answer at the end is, if I work it out, I mean, I can do a long division, there's no problem at all about it, but it's just something that you need to see, that I have got, so this goes in 6 times, 6 goes into, or 336 goes into 2,106 times. You got to trust me on this one now. You're more than welcome to go do a long division setup if you want, but we don't have too much time. So 336 goes into 2,106 times, and it's got 84 left over. Okay, and I can, maybe I should just quickly show you on a spare piece of paper quickly, if I can find it really quickly. I'm going to do it over here so you can see what I'm doing. So we're going to take 2,100 and we're going to divide it by 336. Okay, now I have taught division on YouTube before, and you'll notice that I do it a little bit differently. I like to write down my multiples of the divisor that I'm working with. Okay, so for now I'm just going to go up to 7 just because I can. And you'll notice that you've got 336. I'm just moving the page over so you can see what I'm doing. 2 is 672. 3, you're going to add 336 to that, so you're going to have 8, so that's 1008. Okay, and then you're going to have 1334. 5 times is 1680. Let's see if we can get closer to 2100. And 6 is 2016 if you add them up. Okay, so for me at the moment, I'm looking at quite a long sum. It does take a bit of extra effort, and if division is not your strong point, then this is going to make life a little bit harder for you. But let's just carry on just so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, so here you've got 2006. I know 336 can't go into 2. It can't go into 21. It can't go into 210, but it can go into 2100, and it can go in 6 times. So we're going to have a 6 there. What do we do now? We minus, and you will see that you've got 4, and we're left with 84 over 336. So that's where the 84 comes from. Okay, so the 84 is what's left over. It's almost like your remainder, and we're going to put it over the divisor over there. So that's what's left over. Okay, now if you want to, you can try and find out what number goes into both of them. Okay, now this is where it becomes also more challenging because I don't know what numbers can go into 336. Okay, so we're going to work with 2 or even 4. So let's see if 4 can go into both of them. I know 4 can go into 84, and 4 can also go into 336. Okay, so let's just see what we can do here. Okay, so we can see that 84, let's just go here, 6 over here, 84 divided by 4 is 21, and 336 divided by 4 is 84. Okay, now I can also see, and this is something that I can see, you might have to, oh sorry, I'm not even showing you what I'm doing here. I can see that 21 can go into 84 as well, and that's just something I can see, but again, you might have to do a couple extra steps to get to this point. So 6, we're going to keep the 6 there. I just don't have enough space. I'm just moving to the right now. 21 divided by 21 is 1. 84 divided by 21 is 4, and you get your answer. Now that is a very long way of doing it, and it's not my favorite method. Okay, now this is why I want to show you method number 2, because you're going to see how much better and faster this method is. It's much quicker and it's easier. Okay, and this is quite exciting for me because I know this is where I can change your mind into which method to choose. Okay, so let's go with this again. So we know we have to change 2 over to improper, so that's 15 over 8. We know we're going to get 7 over 6, and we know we're going to get 20 over 7. Okay, and now this is the fun part for me. Okay, I can see a couple of things happening. Now we're going to simplify. Remember I said simplifying, you're going to choose one numerator and one denominator. Now because it's all multiplication, it doesn't matter where my numerator and denominator is. I can choose any 2 that will work together. Now for me, I can see 7 and 7. So 7 and 7. So 7 can go into 7 once. 7 can go into 7 once. Okay, so we're happy with that. Now I'm going to choose 8 and 20. Okay, so 8 and 20. What can go into 8 and 20? And I know that something can go in. And the biggest number that can go in is 4. So 4 can go into 8 twice. 4 can go into 20 5 times. Now you'll notice that it is quite far away from each other, but I'm still working with the numerator and the denominator, so it doesn't matter. Okay. All right, and then I've got the 15 and the 6. And if you know your 3 times table, you'll notice that it goes into both of them. 3 goes into 6 twice, 3 goes into 15 5 times. And now let's just write what we are left with so that it doesn't look so, there's lots of numbers written everywhere. So let's just make it look neat and see what we're working with and see if we can maybe simplify more, maybe not. Okay, so I've got 5 over 2, 1 over 2, and 5 over 1. Now you'll notice you can't simplify anyway. So you remember it's got to be a numerator and a denominator, not numerator and numerator. You can't simplify with two numerators. It has to be a numerator and a denominator. Okay, so now all we're going to do, because we can't simplify anymore, we're just going to times top with top. And it doesn't matter how many times, you're just going to top with top and then bottom with bottom. So let's go. 5 times 1 is 5, times 5 is 25, and 2 times 2 is 4. And now we can work to the point of simplifying it. 4 goes into 25. If you know your 4 times table, goes in 6 times. 6 times 4 is 24. How much is left over to get to 25? 1. And we've got 6 1/4. Now I want you to compare the difference between this one and this one. Okay, just because we simplified in the beginning, it made our numbers easier to work with, and we landed up with 25 over 4 instead of getting this massive number of 2,100 over 336. And then we still had to try and simplify it and get to the end there. Okay, you'll notice with this one, we didn't have to do any division or anything else like that. Yes, we had to try and see how many times 4 goes into 25, but we didn't have this long division calculation to still do. Okay, alright, so that's method 1 and 2 for this one. And because method 2 is so much easier, I'm going to do the next one with method 2 as well, so that you get the hang of it. So we're going to make this improper. Okay, big keyword for multiplication is improper. 5 times 2 is 10, plus 2 is 12 over 5. 4 times 1 is 4, plus 1 is 5 over 4. And we've got 3 times 2 is 6, and we've got 8 over 3. Okay, so now this is quite cool. So let's see what we've landed up with. Okay, so we've got 5 and 5. So 5 goes into 5 once, 5 goes into 5 once. Let's see what else we've got. Which one should we use? Does it really matter? Let's go with 4 and 8. Okay, 4 and 8. 4 goes into 4 once, 4 goes into 8 twice. Nice and easy. Okay, now we've got 3 and 12, and 3 can go into 12. So 3 goes into 3 once, 3 goes into 12 4 times. And now what you're going to do is you're going to times top with top, okay, and bottom with bottom. And you don't have to draw the arrows. I just draw them so I remember which way I'm going. And 4 times 1 is 4, times 2 is 8. Love it when I see this. 1 times 1 is 1, times 1 is still 1. And we just write 8 as an answer. Okay, much better, much easier, and much quicker. Okay, just so much faster. And that's what you want at the end. Okay, now with maths, with this kind of topic in terms of multiplication of fractions, this is something that you do need to practice. So I would suggest getting some more examples just to practice them and make sure you've got them right. Even if you practice the examples that we've done already, you are more than welcome to do that, because it will help you to understand, because we've already got it on the screen already. If you do the same sum and you just pause the screen, at least you can continue with it and then see what the steps that I have done, and see, did you do the same? And if you did do the same, well done, that's fantastic. But if you didn't and you got it wrong, then at least you can see where you're going wrong so that you can fix it. Because maybe you're going wrong when you are converting to improper. Maybe you've missed a simplification, and maybe you wrote the wrong number by mistake. It's all those little things that can go wrong that can obviously affect your final answer. Okay, so that's it for today. And if you tune in next week, I'll have some more lessons up as well. Have a great day.